This is the Definitely Uncertain podcast, brought to you by Gold Rock Capital. Each week, we look at how high net worth families can improve their lives, decisions, and investments in a deeply uncertain world. We always aim to provide practical information, even if we can't offer specific investment advice.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Definitely Uncertain, the Gold Rock podcast. And today we are extremely privileged to have with us Justine Zwerling. And Justine actually defines herself on LinkedIn, first and foremost, as a proud mum. So I guess that's her most important profession. And as somebody who's married to one, I can certainly identify with that strongly. But in between that, Justine also represents and works for the London Stock Exchange. Perhaps we'll talk a little bit later about, Justine, your specific responsibilities there and so forth. But in addition to that, and I hope we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, you seem to have just an amazing capacity for doing other stuff. So building, connecting, it seems to be very much in the nexus between business and women, and to a certain degree also Middle East, Israel, etc., and other stuff. So maybe we'll get your take around the latest developments in our region. But anyway, first and foremost, it's to welcome you. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure.
And maybe just start by telling us a little bit about your background, Justine, and we can sort of go from there.
I was born and bred in London, as you can hear very clearly, but my family tell me that I now speak transatlantic because I'm married to an American, so I probably have to get some elocution lessons at some point. And I came to Israel over 20 years ago. I studied in Bath. I studied also in the Hebrew U, and very proud Israeli and British mum.
Fantastic. And how did you get into the world of, stock markets, capital markets, etc.? How did that happen?
So I originally, I did a lot of work in media prior to coming to Israel. And then I also did some work in welfare to work to support Israelis back to work, which then I kind of took the model globally. And then I was very privileged to join the British Embassy. So I was able to kind of work with a great team there to support the trade and investment between the two countries. And during that time, I saw a huge potential for Israeli companies to start listing on the London Stock Exchange. And Israelis, they're naturally inclined sometimes to go to the States, but London is actually a very much better place for them, both in terms of the time zones and in terms of liquidity and the access to markets. So I started working with the exchange. I brought them to Israel. We had a lot of very successful IPOs. And then I was very privileged to be asked to jump ship, which I did because I'd given my service indirectly to the Queen for a number of years, which was wonderful. But it was time to have a new adventure. So I feel very privileged every day to work for the exchange.
That's amazing. And, for those of us who've watched the relationship between Israeli companies and startups and the UK capital markets, it's had its ebbs and flows and ups and downs. Where are we holding at the moment? Is there a sort of steady stream of Israeli businesses looking to exit or to IPO into London?
Yes.
Or are we one of
the quiet
periods? What are we seeing at the moment?
We're having a really good period. Last year, a number of things happened which were incredibly exciting. First of all, we had an IPO for a cyber company, Brandshield, in December. Also, as well as my day job with the IPOs, I also work with other units in the exchange because we're a very large group. So FTSE Russell welcomed Israel to the index, which is a huge, incredible privilege. We also raised billions of bonds for the Israeli government with the Ministry of Finance. And the London Clearing House also started swapping shekels. So it was a very good year. And this year we've got lots of exciting things to come. There's been lots of different messages in the press, but I see it's all good, it's really good.
So you raise a really interesting point, which is I think most people, even within the financial arena, they think about the London Stock Exchange and they think about Israel, and it's all about, our tech companies or businesses trying to go live and access capital there. But actually what you're telling us is that the sort of capital relationship between Israel and the London markets is much wider and actually much broader and deeper than maybe first meets the eye.
Correct.
Are the things that we're not yet doing between the two, between Israel and sort of London and the capital markets that we could be doing? We haven't really fully utilized.
I think there's also an angle that it probably along coming back to market and raising more capital. So we've got some amazing companies on market. We've got Cape, which is a cyber company. They raised a lot through primary bid. We also had them coming back to market to raise other sums on AIM. We had BATM, which is a medical device company, also coming back to market. So what we've seen during COVID especially is that A, the London Stock Exchange is a fabulous place to list. B, it's a very secure, and your ability to come back to market to raise more funds has been, really very seamless. So the markets have worked very well during this really very difficult time.
Just to close the circle, I was actually a board director of BATM 20 years ago.
Amazing. That's incredible.
And my dad, before he passed away, who's just behind me here, he was when they floated in the mid-90s. So we
amazing.
have a long history. Okay, well that's all good stuff about the commercial side, and maybe we'll come back to that a bit later. I want to hear a little bit about some of the other not-for-profit work that you do, because it sounds really exciting to me. I think one of the things which jumped out to me is what you call the Jewish Women's Network. I'm really interested to know why you set it up, what it's for, who's actually involved in that. What is the purpose of that organization?
Sure. Well, first of all, the most amazing woman, Diane Cote, she is our Chief Risk Officer. She began a Women's Inspired Network in about 2016 because she realized that women really need a platform. They need, their sisterhood. They need people who can lift them, support them out of the, that kind of cycle where you get trapped in sometimes, where you can't go up. So we started this amazing community led by Diane, and really she's my huge inspiration every day in my life. It was about 2.5-3 years ago where I kind of had this enlightened moment where I sat in my garden having a cup of tea, realizing I'm a very busy mum. I do a lot for nonprofit, love my job, love my kids, but there's something missing for me about being able to connect Jewish women together. Mm-hmm. And I did a very kind of ad hoc lunch and breakfast in my garden, and I invited women from tech, from cyber, from med tech, from all different regions, also people who weren't out of work, mums who were at home, who were feeling a bit discouraged about their career. And we all got together, and the beauty of it was the first question was, who are you and what do you do? And then the next question was, how can I help? So it all started in a very organic way. And I came to Diane and I said, Diane, I would love to, within the London Stock Exchange, create this very special network. And it basically ballooned from there. And we were very privileged to host I think it was about 250 Jewish women from all over the world, from Gibraltar, from South Africa, from America, from Switzerland, from Israel, from Britain. And we were privileged to open the stock exchange as Jewish women, as proud mothers, as career women. And from then, there's been many, many different events that we've had together, and beautiful things have happened, partnerships, business partnerships, long-term friendships. supporting women who don't have confidence, because I think something that I bang on about an awful lot is imposter syndrome. So I'm very privileged to work with the lady who actually wrote Imposter Syndrome. She's called Claire Josser. Okay. And I highly recommend that everybody goes onto her website, because she does these beautiful podcasts and it just gives you enormous energy. So yeah, that's the short of it.
I can say confidently that imposter syndrome is not limited only to
correct.
I often
feel it's open for everyone.
When we have great people on the podcast and other people that I have the privilege to meet, as you say, thinking, wow, why are they even spending time talking to me? They've got so many other important things to be doing. But yeah, I identify with that strongly. When you are sort of balancing between all of the different aspects of your life, your professional life, the personal life, the not-for-profit, and so forth, do you find that it is, do you sort of look at it, if we sort of take it from the financial world, it's a kind of portfolio approach? How do you manage to actually split up the time and resource and effort, and what sort of different benefits does it give you, all the different aspects of your life? The reason I ask the question is a lot of the people that see this podcast, they themselves are managing within a sort of family office or a family business environment, actually in the second and often the third generation, how to balance creating meaning within their own lives between, do I focus on the family business? Do I build a new business? Should I be involved in philanthropy? I think understanding how people balance that and maybe also integrate those things together, I think can be really helpful for other people to hear about.
Sure. Well, I haven't got it perfected, but I can tell you briefly what I do. So first of all, I'm highly dyslexic, and I only discovered that in my mid-30s. Wow. And for me, and all the time throughout life, I just thought I'm nice but dim, and really struggled with some conventional things. But during my 20s, I invested in doing a time management course, which, because I'm dyslexic, still helps me today. So I think what I do is I'm very, very old school, and I use something that probably nobody has anymore, a pen and a notepad. And every month or 2 months, I write down my aspirations, both professionally and then both obviously and personally. And I look back at that and I say to myself, this is what I said last month. How can I make this happen? And, very much by affirmations. I mean, I'm kind of like a bit of a hippie in a way. But I think, that really helps me. I wake up very early.
You're far too young to be a hippie. That's not
possible. I'm not young. I'm not young. I wake up very early. First thing I do is, before I open my eyes, I say thank you, gratitude for everything that I have, for my family, to give me energy for this new day. I usually start working before the kids are awake, and then I make sure to prioritize the time to give them hugs and kisses in their fluffy pajamas, make them breakfast, be with them. That's always been a big part of me as being a mother and bringing my whole self to work. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another element about, yes, I do work in the city, but I bring my whole self to work.
And have you seen the work environment change to accommodate that in the sort of during your professional?
Definitely. I mean, I wasn't one of the first girls in the city, but I can introduce you to a few who mm-hmm. had a jolly difficult time. But the exchange is an incredible melting pot. We're driving diversity, neurodiversity all the time. So I feel very privileged to work there. But in terms of my nonprofit work, for me, that's part of my veins. That's who I am. It's like the Yorkshire tea I drink in the morning. And how can I put my strategic energy behind something and help? So I work with probably 4 or 5 different charities. Vibe Israel is a sensational I don't know if you know anything about Vibe Israel, but I suggest Joanna.
That's Joanna. Yes. Oh,
yes.
She's fantastic.
Yes. So I've been with her since the beginning. We've done.
Have Joanna on. You will have to tell her to come on.
I will definitely get her on. Yes.
She's awesome.
Yeah. So we've been able to gently rebrand Israel through, fun, no politics. We did this amazing thing by bringing 5 famous dogs over to Israel with their little coats and their jewelry and everything. And each dog had 16 million followers.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow, it's just scary.
Yeah, it is. So Vibe Israel is one. I also do a lot of stuff for the Guide Dog Center. I have a blind friend who is actually my biggest inspiration of my life. He's called Avi Solomon. He's Ethiopian. He lives in Bet Shemesh.
Oh, he's the runner.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I see him out running fairly regular. One of his running partners is a neighbor of mine.
Yes, exactly. So we're
awesome.
very close to that, and he's my brother, and he was really. I can't explain to you what meeting Avi did for me. We used to be train buddies. We speak all the time. I'm bringing him to London to do the marathon. We did the marathon also a few years ago in London. And helping get more blind people guide dogs.
That's amazing. Let's move now to something else. You obviously, as you said, you mentioned that the exchange itself has got strands in all sorts of connections in almost every important center in the world, and of course employs people that presumably come from all those different places. You've seen also male entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, international entrepreneurs. What do you think is the difference when you look at the women that you've met in Israel and are working within their professional field and their sort of peers in the UK? Are they just the same as the sort of bloke entrepreneurs in Israel relative to the rest of the world, or are they bringing something different to that game as well?
Well, as you know, we Israelis are very feisty. So
yes, I had noticed.
Yes. So I think the ability, for women in general, the ability to multitask, we all have that. It's part of our DNA. And I think, the Israeli women very much understood quite a while back around the boys' club and how to create the girls' club and how to support each other and to build our different groups of sisterhoods. And then, because Israelis, it's like you meet somebody and then all of a sudden you're being WhatsApped by them at 2:00 in the morning. So we're problem solvers. And when the door is closed, we go through the window.
And interestingly, you make a really important point here. And again, for people who are not from Israel, in the high-tech and entrepreneurial arenas, most of the men, whether they actually were or they were with somebody else, their kind of route to becoming entrepreneurs is almost exclusively male. It'll be, army-driven or something else where really there's been very little female activity. And as you say, they act almost like a boys' club together. It has been very powerful, I think, for the Israeli entrepreneurial scene. But I can see that would create a special challenge for females who wanted to be entrepreneurs in Israel. Good to see that they are, as you say, instead of coming through the door, they'll make the window into the door as well.
Don't worry, we're changing all of that, especially for our children. It's very important.
That's terrific. Maybe one last thing for us to talk about today. I'd love to be able to leave the people watching and listening with some practical stuff. You've been through a tremendous amount on the business side and on the not-for-profit side. You're very active, obviously, in empowering other women to, do as much as they can on both of those arenas. Can you share some top tips that have really helped you? You've mentioned that, I'm amazed that you find the time once a month to sit down and note for yourself, these are the places I need. That's where I'm going to put into my personal ways for the next month, and this is how I'm going to get there. and then check and see whether you've come back. Are there some key things that you could share with us on that?
Well, I wrote on my post-it yesterday, goals for this month, continue to inspire, create networks, mentor, give, and giggle globally.
Wow. I don't think there's anything I could possibly add to that. Justine, it has been an incredible privilege to have you on. I'm sure we will have you back again to talk about other things which are going on. We didn't get to talk today about what's going on in the Gulf and all that stuff I know you're involved with. So
I'd love to talk to you about our new sisters over there next time.
Okay, we're definitely going to have you back and talk about developments in the Middle East. Justine, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Remember, if you've got any questions or follow-up, please email us or just drop us a note. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.